Congratulations. You have found another meta egg. Look, these things are extremely rare and you should be proud of yourself. Anyways, what we do here at Meta Egg is we examine the meta aspects of media. Now, some people have had the experience, right? You're smoking pot with your friends, and one of them goes, "Hey, have you ever watched The Wizard of Oz with Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon?" And maybe, you went looking for the album and you went looking for the movie. And before you knew it, to get everything together, you had like over a dozen people watching this movie. And it doesn't matter if it was real or not real, you experienced it together. Now, the reason why this is important is because it doesn't stop at just that movie. That movie is actually almost a trope. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like basement level. And the person who took this to like the skyscraper levels would be an individual known as David Charles Plate. Now, some people have insisted that I call him David Charles Plate. Now, I need to introduce this fella because he is a peculiar creature. Hey, David, how would you best describe what you do?
How would I describe it? Well, I mean, what it used to be for me for years was that I was going to lengths to actually get the physical media and play it together. I would get Dark Side of the Moon prepared with the first heartbeat, where you go on, take a turntable and you hear that first beat, because you got to know when the album begins. You don't have a digital reference for it, and I would actually get the third roar of the MGM Lion to align with that. But I was introduced to that in junior high by my brother. Just told me about it, and I went home, and I didn't have the CD, I had the record. So my first experience of this was a VHS of The Wizard of Oz and the record Dark Side of the Moon. Since that time, I've dedicated most of my life to this phenomenon and seeking out other examples of resonance. And everything will go in sync with everything to some degree, because that's just the nature of things. But what fascinates me is when it crosses a certain line in places where you really have to question how this could even happen on its own, or what that even means. And so, it could be synchronicity in certain cases is obviously a natural phenomenon. I think even if there is intent, it still doesn't discount the natural aspect of the thing. Like, you could give it a push or something like that. But yeah, I seek out resonance between different media, and I run experiments. And if my experiment is successful enough, then I share it online. So there's actually over 200 films for streaming and download on the SyncBook website that I have available. Thesyncbook.com. So if you go to thesyncbook.com and you go to videos and you look at Sync Flicks, that's my work.
Sync Flicks, and it actually, here, let me show it. Hold on, because it has the Dark Side of the Moon and the Wizard of Oz put together, so it's kind of like it's a decent visual. Here, let me see if I can find it real quick. So when was junior high for you, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I'm 42 years old. So how old are people in junior high? I mean, I was young, So
what year though, is what I'm saying.
Jesus Christ, what year? I don't know. I guess 9/11 happened for me after that. I guess 1996 or something in there.
Okay. So today, just so everybody knows, we're talking about the one that he has just posted, which is called Rosemary's White Album. It's not the first time that you've messed with this, I imagine.
No, we actually did an always record on this years ago. Another podcast on the SyncBook website. But yeah, so yeah, there's over two here. I believe there's over 200 films for free streaming and download that has taken years to accumulate.
Well, the issue is basically copyright, because you're playing the visuals of the movie with the album. And so what SyncBook basically had to do, if you guys aren't aware of what SyncBook is, if you go up here and you look at SyncBook has podcasts and it has subscribers and all of that, it has generated enough money to get itself its own servers. And these servers basically get around the copyright. So you see Meta Egg is right there, but right next to it is SyncFlix, which is David's like
Yeah, I don't
layer.
even think we're getting around copyright. Like, even that terminology for me doesn't really apply ultimately, because the different platforms have made decisions where they will take things down even if you have a grounds for fair use. And so I don't really honestly think we're getting around anything other than those platforms being uptight with what we should technically be allowed to do, in my opinion. And so, yeah, it's more in line with the sampling or collage art or things of that nature. And so the film itself is put into an entirely different context, as well as the music. And so, like with a lot of these pairings, like this has the audio of the film included in between the vocals. So it's
Yeah,
not
you do a
even.
really good job with that. By the way, I think that I had seen this without the movie's audio mixed in before, but it really makes
Yeah.
an impact as far as timing's concerned.
Yeah, there's anomalous things that happen in the course of it in that way. Yeah.
So, okay, wait a second. There's something that I want to make apparent here. I think I sent it to you in the private chat, so I'll move over here and look at this and then move this up here. No, it did not work out for me. There we go.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now, this is a news article. I'm going to read this news article real quick, okay? Save for the Kennedy assassination, coincidence has perhaps never coagulated with the same deeply and probable intensity as it did around the Manson killings. Stranger still is the manner in which coincidence seems to knit the Tate LeBlanca murders together, with both Rosemary's Baby, in parentheses, a great film, and The White Album, in parentheses, a great record, as if all three were somehow of a piece, and in a sense that goes beyond the former's being directed by Polanski, or the latter's inspiring Manson's decided helter-skelter scenario. Now, okay, why don't you do the best you can, David, to tell me why it's important to mash up the White Album with Rosemary's Baby, like as far as layers of meaning go.
So, I went to go see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood in the theater by myself, and afterwards I overheard people talking about it as they were leaving, especially like young people. Their reaction to it was like, what was that even about? Like, I watched a different movie than they watched. So just like with this pairing, it's like the more that you're aware of the backstory and the crazy synchronistic web that exists, the more impactful the experiences of viewing this pairing, because it's one thing on a surface level, like even just like you could be like, oh well, that flows really nicely, or the music seems to complement the films in different ways, but things will get said in both the album and the film, along with the visuals, that will reference particulars that have a lot of depth in the, like, what we could call maybe this isn't Hollywood, this is New York, of course, but like Hollywood mythology. And it connects to Hollywood in terms of Polanski and the murders. But yeah, so it's there's so much going on. Like, we could just start going into some of those fine points if you want to. That'd be one way to do it.
Okay, let's stop right here. At this particular scene within the movie is where the young couple played by Mia Farrow, and I'm not sure this actor's name. I know that there's a history to him, but his name is Guy because he's basically a stand-in for her husband who gives her up. Spoilers to the devil to have a baby.
Yeah.
This is within the Beauty and the Beast realm of understanding, or mythology like cycle, I guess. We just mentioned this off of the Think Tank, which both David and I occur on regularly, that you can find at Zertis, at Andreas Zertis, or Zertis, Xitrus,
yeah,
on YouTube. Anyways, Think Tank happens every Tuesday. And we've talked a lot about this idea of like the Beauty and the Beast archetype.
Yeah.
Which is basically the devil, the dragon or beast in the book of Revelations, having an affair with the Scarlet Woman, which can take a bunch of different actresses' mask, so to speak. But tonight we're talking about Mia Farrow being like one of the predecessors or mythological carriers of this moniker.
Right.
David,
So,
and what am I right?
Yeah, so Mia Farrow was in India just before production started for this movie, with the Maharishi, with the Beatles. So she was hanging out with the Beatles, right? And she goes directly from that to this production. You know, there's the second song in the album is Dear Prudence, which is a reference to Prudence Farrow, who was there with them as well, who the song is actually reaching out to Prudence to kind of step out of her space that she was going into, because she got so into meditation that was basically all she was doing with herself and with her life. And so, you know, that has applicability, and that's this show is called Meta Egg. That's extremely meta, right? So this scene itself,
Mia Farrow's sister is actually like a song title within the actual album.
Yeah, second song on the album, following back in the USSR. And so this scene in particular, they're looking at a body that had just landed on a Volkswagen Beetle parked in front of the Dakota, which in 1980 was where John Lennon was killed. Actually, what you're looking at in this shot as they're walking away is the exact spot where John Lennon was gunned down by Mark David Chapman. And so the woman who landed on the Beetle in the film, I'd have to look up her name. It's Vitri something. She was Playmate of the Year in 1968, which is when this movie came out. They referred to her by her real name in the film when they meet in the laundry room, and she ends up getting what they call the Devil's Pepper, which is very reminiscent of Sergeant Pepper, right? But she gets that necklace, and you know,
I didn't make that connection, because first off, we need to say, like, there's this weird, there's this nerdy Easter egg of Aleister Crowley actually being on Sergeant Pepper's. Now, granted, there's a shit ton of individuals who have influenced pop culture, both that would be considered heroes and anti-heroes within the Sergeant Pepper's album. But anyways, Aleister Crowley was the writer of Moonchild, which was the template. We'll say template. Right. The template of Rosemary's Baby, I think.
In certain respects, you could make that argument. Yeah, there's also the argument that I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong, but the writer of Rosemary's Baby, Ira Levin, he's actually, there's a strong argument that he was the originator of the Paul is dead rumor, because it was his department that he was in college that the first place where we can find reference to that idea actually came from the university's newspaper. And so that's a whole other thing to get into, kind of. But you know, what I was going to say is that this playmate who lands on this Beetle in front of where a Beetle would later be killed, She suffered the worst accident in a Playboy modeling shoot in history, where she fell off of a hammock. And you can see in the centerfold from this year that this movie came out, her in that hammock. I'd have to look up her name again. I should have been prepared with that. But yeah, so yeah, that's really odd. There's actually three
I
different
like the thing that's interesting to me is like the way that the album, I'll have to look up the song list, but at that particular time, it like etched itself in my memory because it was Buffalo Bill. Like it's all
right.
about killing, like, Buffalo. And
Right,
another
where they
thing
say
that's
the
weird is
buffalo, but it's
because,
actually bungalow. They go back and forth, so it doesn't. It may
right,
or may not say that in the lyrics, but it is Bungalow
but it's
Bill. He
kind
who
of
lives in
like,
bungalows, where the
right,
girls in the
but
Hollywood
Buffalo
bungalows.
Bill is like the lead bad guy off of like Silence of the Lambs, right? So there's this whole like
Right,
this
but yeah,
idea of like a killer. And it's funny because the individual, the old man, I think his name is Roman or whatever, he has like a real distinct
yes,
look to him.
yeah,
Within the
cassette.
whole time period, whenever he shows up, it's almost like the rhythm of the album changes
Yeah,
and it becomes that Buffalo Bill character where it's almost like celebrating death. Because in the White Album, there's this weird celebration of death. Like it talks about murder multiple
it's
times,
it's
and it
true.
almost foreshadows the album in itself, kind of foreshadows the death of Lennon. That's
Yeah,
why it's interesting, right?
yeah, and the same thing is also true for Double Fantasy. But the thing is it, well, more so here. I mean, it's it's very subversive. It's incredible how many songs are actually referencing killing and death. I mean, even Rocky Raccoon and Happiness is a Warm Gun, and
Shoot, your
on and
happiness
on it
is a
goes.
warm gun is the big one, right? Because it's like, oh man, is that foreshadowing? That's
Right.
just like
Well, there's crazy stuff
horrible.
here. So like Rise was written on the wall along with other things in Sharon's blood. I believe that was Sharon's. But anyway, during the Manson murders, they wrote Rise on the wall. The argument for writing Rise was that they heard that in Revolution Number 9, which is appears on this album, second to last song, if you want to call it a song. And it's later communicated that it wasn't actually Rise that was said; it was Rye. And John Lennon would later be killed over Catcher in the Rye, according to Mark
Right.
David Chapman. And so it's very, very bizarre. I mean, Mark
Man,
David Chapman
there's just
read
too much.
what yeah, yeah.
I think that I'm happy. I'm excited. Like I'm a little bit overly excited about that we picked this one first
Mm,
because okay, the first time that I ever heard about like The Wizard of Oz and Pink Floyd, it was like
mhm,
over a pool game, right? And we're
mhm.
sitting there playing, and the guy's like listing off all of these reasons why the two should go together, right? He was like, that
Right.
was the best album, that was the best selling movie, so forth and so on. But none of his reasons were really like good enough, so to
No,
speak.
the proof is in the pudding, so you have to run the experiment, and there's no substitute for watching the whole thing. And that's the way a lot of these pairings actually work, because you'll catch things if you're paying attention and you're watching it like you would a regular movie. You're paying attention, you'll catch things. So like the way that Dark Side of the Moon culminates with The Wizard of Oz is such that the third round, because it goes 2.25 times with the album with the film, and so it's the third round. If you start at the third roar, she lands back in her bed at the end, and on the lyrics, home, home again, I like to be here when I can,
Home,
in time. And so
home again.
experientially, it's about that tying it all back together and that delivery. And so that's, even if beyond the looping, it's the way that these things will pay off if they're really solid. So some of them are just
Right.
like they cross a certain
Because the only
line.
reason you would watch it is that extra layer of meaning, right? Like the music sort of like acts as a secondary soundtrack to the actual movie. And again,
Right.
you did really well with this because it's almost like when you bring in the voices of the actors, there's no music in the background, it's just their voice. And so it's almost like a little bit of a punctuation on how what's going on in the song basically relates to the visuals that you're getting in the movie again. But again, like right when it starts off, well, first off, what is the beginning of your newest track? Because it's not the White Album. right? There's a little bit of
Oh,
a
yeah, I took a little bit of a creative liberty because I aligned the end of both these albums with the very end of the film, and so
okay, so
there's
that's
that.
the end of the Manson family. I
And
kind of
it
suspected that.
just so happens when they get into the elevator and the lines that get said right before
Okay,
the light White Album starts is actually, he's saying you're in advertising. And he goes,
so
"Oh,
you
that's where
wrapped
all
it
the money is,
around.
isn't it?" So it's right when it says that's where the money is, isn't it? And right before they get in the elevator and then it starts, and then there's the beginning of Back in the USSR has that airplane sound effect. It really
Right.
works with the elevator. So it just landed that way because I aligned the ending as I did. And so, like, you wouldn't necessarily know how to do that unless you're looking at it on like an editing program of some sort, But yeah, no, I put in just for because I put in "Who Has Seen the Wind" from Yoko Ono, which was the B side of Instant Karma, which felt meaningful to me. But that song has always kind of reminded me of that theme song from Rosemary's Baby. La 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 la. Like
Okay,
so,
yeah, yeah.
so yeah, I just kind of left the volume up of both on a little bit. You did something for that first part. So, but yeah,
So as a devil's advocate, I mean, the White Album is a very like disassociative album. It's not an album that is easy to put on at a party, so to speak.
it's my favorite Beatles album, and it's been that way for many years. And but
Really?
yeah, absolutely. The thing is though, is that the album ends with a lullaby, and
It's the whole album is an lullaby. I
so it
only know.
is.
Okay, wait. We're getting
Yeah,
ahead of
yeah.
ourselves because that's
Are
important
we?
to understand. Like, Rosemary's Baby is a movie about this devil baby being born, and the whole album of
Yeah,
like the White Album is a whole bunch of lullabies, like
yes.
creepy ass lullabies.
Yeah, it's
Like,
true.
w-
And the same thing
w-
is true for Manson Family Sings too. And so, but the
okay,
thing
yeah,
is
all
that
right,
it ends with this lullaby, thus making the whole thing into a symbolic lullaby. And this is supposed to be the
for
high
real,
point of the revolution of the 60s. They got revolution number 9. The thing is that the end of the movie is her stepping forward to basically give the child a lullaby to rock. Is like, let the mother do it, because this woman is just kind of like shaking the crib and the baby's crying, the devil's baby's crying, and they're like, let her have her mother or whatever. That's kind of like carries through the whole thing in this really weird symbolic way. I mean, yeah. It's strange because it's called Rosemary's Baby, but you only really see the baby at the end, and you still don't really see the baby. And there's that line, "Its eyes, what did you do to its eyes?" Tracy Twyman argued that she thought that that was actually a reference to Frank Sinatra because Mia Farrow found out that she was pregnant in real life while they were filming this movie, and she didn't know if the baby's was Woody Allen's or Frank Sinatra's. And the question,
bum,
and
bum,
because Frank
bum.
Sinatra was known by old Blue Eyes, right? So
Right.
like the question was, when
Pretty
the
eyes.
baby's born, we'll be able to
Oh,
tell whose baby it is. And the thing is that Frank Sinatra has all these connections with the Catholic Church. He filed for divorce with Mia Farrow on the day and year that the impregnation scene was shot for this movie. Like, that's not a mistake.
Bright
Like, he was
Eyes.
basically like, if yeah, Bright Eyes or Blue Eyes, yeah.
Bright, but
Or you're thinking
his
of the
name is
ape from
Blue Eyes,
Planet.
but we're talking
Yeah.
about Planet of the Apes again.
Right,
Look,
but she's
man,
like,
I
you're
can't, I
yeah.
can't, I can't.
Go ahead.
I gotta mention that there's a
Do it.
relationship here between those movies. The original Planet of the Apes, 2001, and Rosemary's
Yes.
Baby all come on the same
Same
time.
year. Same year. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, and
the
there's a
connections are
lot of
endless.
like crossovers and connections between the movies themselves. There's
Yeah.
Easter eggs between the movies, as well as like, I'm
Dude.
just go ahead and say
Dude.
it, but the
Yeah.
World Trade Center like relationship and how it develops is actually shown within the movies themselves. Also, I mean, would you
Right.
agree, David?
Yeah, yeah. Construction started for the World Trade Center in 1968, the same year of Planet of the Apes, Rosemary's Baby, and 2001: A Space Odyssey. 2001: A Space Odyssey is the exact same length as Rosemary's Baby from the Dawn of Man. So, like, if you start the film at the Dawn of Man sequence, they align that way. Sometimes I like to actually play this sync with 2001: A Space Odyssey as well. But yeah, the amount of parallels between Planet of the Apes and 2001 is off the charts. The director of photography for John Lennon's Imagine video was the ape who first touches the monolith in the movie 2001. So
Rosemary's best friend is like Dr.
Dr.
I
Zaius.
can't remember.
Yeah.
What? Say it again.
Dr. Zaius. You just remember from the Simpsons
Dr.
episode,
Zaius, you're
Dr.
right.
Zaius, Dr. Zaius. Yeah. So
Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius.
the lake that they land in at the beginning of Planet of the
Lake
Apes is
Powell
actually the lake that they soar over during the Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite sequence of 2001: A Space
in
Odyssey.
2001.
Both
Like
films
they
deal
were up
heavily
against
with.
each other for special effects. I think
Well, yeah,
Rosemary's Baby gets taken out of that, but all movies have like the taint of Beauty and the Beast.
yeah. So they had a new category in the Oscars. It started in 1968 for best special effects makeup, and they gave it to Planet of the Apes. And Arthur C. Clarke argued that he believed that they gave it to Planet of the Apes because they didn't actually know that the apes in 2001, that many of them were human beings in costume. That the costumes were so good they thought that they were looking at apes or something. And so there's an argument for that, especially at that time, the way that people perceived the special effects. Like it's only later on that we can go, that doesn't look quite right. I mean, the most impressive part about 2001, special effects wise, isn't anything in space. It's actually that first whole sequence of Dawn of Man, because all of that is filmed indoors. And you might never guess that, and that's one of the arguments for him faking the lunar landing. Because
When you say
that
Dawn of
front.
Man, you're talking about the apes eating and opposing each other and beating each other with bones and stuff. All takes
Yeah.
place inside, which has to do with the way that Kubrick filmed, which leads to the faking of the moon landing and stuff of that nature, because it was kind of a state-of-the-art way of actually filming. I
Right.
guess the closest analogy of it would be Disney's current volume. What they call the volume is basically used to kind of like mask the fake background, and Kubrick's time it was projected on there, and then they would cover up the projectors with rocks or something similar.
Yes. Yeah, the base of it. Yeah, so you'd always find that point where the terrain changes, and you can see that in all the lunar footage practically. So like that line where you're looking at a terrain change. You're actually frozen
Right.
right now.
There's
I hope
like
you're not
a
frozen for
rock
the viewers.
line. There's a rock line in the distance.
Right. And so, 2001: A Space Odyssey is you're looking at the birth of Christ, right? The return of Christ. It's a star child at the end. It's got a messianic message there. But then when you look at Rosemary's Baby, you're looking at the reversal of that. So there's this idea in Kabbalah that the Klipo mirror Tetragrammaton. If you take the titles for 2001, where it says the dawn of man, and then it says Jupiter mission 18 months later, and then and Jupiter and Beyond the Infinite, and you do the English gematria of those titles, it totals 777, which is the gematria of the lightning flash that extends through the 22 pathways of the Kabbalistic tree, or at least the pathways that make up that zigzag lightning flash. And so what are the chances of that? Because that's literally describing the Shefa, the emanation of Tetragrammaton as the tree of life, and then Rosemary's Baby is communicating a whole reversal. Anton LaVey, the head of the Church of Satan, was actually a consultant for this film, Rosemary's Baby. It's rumored that he's in it during the impregnation scene, but that's not actually true. Although there is references to Sammy Davis Jr. in
What
the
is
film, which
somebody
is book on the shelf. What's that?
does somebody say that he is the Satan?
Yeah, that's a rumor. That's not actually true, but he was a consultant for the movie. So what the fuck ever. Yeah, no, that's crazy. So and then also Susan Atkins, shortly before the murders happened, was actually filmed. I've seen the film. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but of her in the coffin where she plays a vampire, and she gets out of the coffin and she points at the audience like they're her next victim, and she was high on LSD when they filmed it. As far as I know, this was never mentioned in court, but if they're going to be talking about weird cult shit and like everything that, because they called the Manson family a cult, maybe we should have kind of like, I believe that with these trials, including Polanski, like in both cases, you have people are guilty in their own ways, like, but both of them had highly unusual trials. Polanski and Manson, where they basically suspended the normal rules for a trial and decided that they would do it completely different. I personally theorize that they did this because Had they had like a real trial with Manson, it probably would have blown, or not probably, it would have blown the lid on a lot of the weird underground shit that was going on in Hollywood. And you know, in all kinds of ways, because you have like what was actually happening with the Satanic Church, and then and beyond, and then the Process Church as well, whatever. Although, you know, I don't know the degree of that. But then with Polanski, it would have blown the lid off of casting agencies being used as prostitution rings, where parents basically pimped out their children, and you know,
What
no
we
one ever
call casting porn now.
yeah, no one ever talks about that there was a direct underground tunnel between Polanski's home where that incident happened and the Playboy Mansion. I didn't mean to say Polanski's home. It was Jack Nicholson's home where Polanski was when that happened. So Jack Nicholson actually had a tunnel to the Playboy Mansion.
Shut up.
It's true. It's true. So did Warren Beatty.
Nicholson did Chinatown with Polanski. Is that right?
Yes, he's in Chinatown, and then he's in The Shining, obviously. And so,
well,
yeah.
The Shining isn't Polanski. That's Kubrick. But
they're
right on top of each other is what you're saying.
This connects, because who was the other targets of Mark David Chapman besides John Lennon? It was Johnny Carson, the most famous line in The Shining being "Here's Johnny," and David Bowie, who did Space Oddity. Space Oddity was played during the Apollo 11 launch. Think of Danny's sweater. Think of 2001.
All the conspiracy theories that have to do with Kubrick being also the individual who faked the moon landing.
Yeah, so that's the thing. So, oh man, yeah, no, it's extensive, and so, you know, the Beatles play into this in so many ways. Whatever we want to extrapolate from those things is one thing, but the data kind of speaks for itself. What are you doing over there?
I'm having difficulty, but it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
Okay.
Everything's fine.
You're using your phone, I guess. Is that what's happening? Okay.
Yeah. I was just making sure it was focused. We got to get everything into focus. I mean, the thing is like other people have made the connection. Like we were reading the news article earlier today where people were making, but that's not like, I mean, for some people, they get a little obsessed about it. Some people take it as not very important. I like the fact that in chapter 27, the shooter, Mark David Chapman, kind of uses the connection between the White Album and Rosemary's Baby and where he is as like some sort of an excuse. Now, I don't know if that's really Chapman's like frame of thinking, but I think in the movie,
I think they took some creative liberties in.
Do you think that they did? I mean, here I was talking to the individual that I talked to recently. Was named Douglas Gill on PKD, because I mean a lot of synchromystics get their ideas from Philip K. Dick, right? Mm-hmm. However, is that actually a healthy thing? Like, here's the thing that we're dealing with: is this healthy? Like seeing, come on, you got an answer. I can see it in your face. What do you think?
Is it healthy? I don't know. It depends. Like, I'm more interested in the data than I am anything else at this point in my life. So it's just like, I'm like, you know,
let's talk about
the data and it speaks for itself. So, you know, Lennon was killed on December 8th, 1980. That was actually a year before I was born to the day, just by the way, but that's irrelevant. But it was actually, that is a religious holiday. That's a Catholic holiday known as the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which is the day that we relate to the Virgin Mary's impregnation, the Virgin's impregnation, right? So that's the day of conception, and so it's pretty fascinating then that a day that is for Catholicism is the most directly referenced day with the film happens to be when that took place. It's very bizarre. So yeah, there they are in front of the Dakota.
Yeah, this is the Dakota, the building where Rosemary's Baby is filmed.
Right. So
So
the interior shots aren't actually filmed at the Dakota, but the front is, and it's supposed to be in the Dakota. So, and I believe that Yoko still has a room there to this day. Not just a
really?
room, an apartment. Yeah.
Huh. I
Yeah.
just think it's interesting because I mean, there's so much that between right next to it is, I think it's called the Sam Raimi's or something like that.
Mm,
Not, I'm not talking about the director, but the Sam. There's another building right here with this little peak at the top. You can see
hmm
that is tied to CIA like drug trafficking.
Yeah. They
So
didn't
there's a
film
lot
it.
of
They didn't film
conspiracy theories that
anything. To, Nothing was to take place at the Dakota. There was like a rule, or I think it was kind of like a just out of consideration. So from the end of 1980 into the future, nobody really filmed anything that was to take place at the Dakota until Vanilla Sky. And so, like, you can see it shows up in Ghostbusters, like the giant baby of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man walks in front of the Dakota at one point,
right.
but it's very rare that would actually show up in any films just out of respect until Vanilla
It's the
Sky.
one that's right next to it. This one right here that you'll always see,
Mhm.
because if you're looking at the park, it has two distinct towers that are identical, and you can always say, "Oh, that's right next to the Dakota."
Yeah.
But that's
So
called like the Sam Raimi's or Sam. I think Mark Leclerc, who was a God rest his soul,
Mhm.
was a synchro was a synchromystic who talked a lot about this idea because he did a lot of what you do. In fact, I only know maybe 3 people who do what you do as far as like the Syzygy as first off, let's look at the word Syzygy for a second.
It's Syzygy, sir. But yeah.
Syzygy without the R. And it basically is a nearly straight line configuration of 3 celestial bodies. So it's an astrological like astrological term.
Yeah, in this case, it would be like you as the viewer are the sun, and then one piece of media is the Earth, and the other piece of media is the moon. So it's an occultation. There's also the application of this in psychology as well, and Jung like to use the term a lot. That's why I find that it works well for this in his particular relationship to it.
Yeah,
But yeah.
because I mean, Freud and Jung were one of the first individuals who basically said, "Hey, this means something else." You know,
hmm Yeah.
that symbolism was a little bit deeper than the eye beheld, so to speak. That there was some sort of alignment, I guess, is what you could say.
Right. Well, keeping in mind that Jung's whole idea of synchronicity is derived from a beetle. So, like, it was a beetle that flew in the window. If you look at his book, Synchronicity and a Causal Principle, it's very explicit in the way he describes the idea first occurring to him, where he would actually, there was a patient laying in, doing the couch trip. They're describing a dream with a scarab, and then a scarab happened to fly in the window. And he breaks protocol kind of, and he picks it up and he asks the person to open their eyes and he shows it to them. Oh, by the way, yeah, yesterday, this film is all related to the Paul is dead stuff, you know, because Paul McCartney got in that moped accident, and so he gets into a bike accident, and that's what kicks the whole thing off, where the Beatles disappear in that film. So it's kind of a
Oh, nope,
subliminal
nope,
Paul is
nope,
dead
nope. Go
communication.
into detail. Go into detail on what you're talking about.
Have you seen Yesterday?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay, so you know when it all starts, when the
So you're
Beatles
saying
drop
that
out of reality, he gets
when
in the
he
bike
has his
accident.
event where he
Yeah,
gets hit by the
yeah,
bus,
yeah.
that's
He chipped his.
basically the same story that's behind
It's
Paul
not
is
even.
dead?
Yes, and there's all these other aspects to it because he chips his tooth, and so that was one of the things that the Paul is dead enthusiasts trip
Paul
out
had
on
a
is the way
chipped
that
tooth.
the chipped tooth, and then it disappear. It shows his tooth comes back, and then it disappears again. It comes
Right.
back, and it was that
Okay.
he said that the reason why he got into the moped accident was because he was so distracted by how bright the full moon was, and then when you look at the timing in which he gave, it's actually the new moon, so it doesn't make any sense. So
I'll allow it.
there's probably 50 different
His
ways.
name's Jack.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah, no, it's a whole thing. And then this is Danny Boyle, who also you might know. You can't watch this anymore online because it's been scrubbed, but you can find from a distance Danny Boyle's is that his name? The guy who did Train Spotting? Do I got the name right? The
That sounds familiar, yes.
Yeah, it's the guy who did the Olympics demonstration that is people take as predictive of COVID-19 insanity, where where it's got Voldemort or whatever with the wand, and there's all the children in the hospital beds and all that stuff. But I feel like we should just go back to talking about Rosemary's Baby and the White Album.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. We just mentioned this one word.
Well, yeah.
Oh, so
But
that's basically what you're saying. Like the meaning of the movie plus the meaning of the album, kind of like if you put them together, it creates this whole
it's
other
like
thing.
light refracts water at exactly 42 degrees in order for us to perceive a rainbow. Like, so from our perspective. And so that's what I relate the album film pairing to, is like that phenomenon. Like the thing is one thing, but the other element is in your own awareness or your own knowledge of what all the depth of what everything being pointed to is. So it's like one person will have one experience with a movie in the first place, but then when you're talking about like a sync film, it's like even more emphasized, that idea, like it's what you bring to it.
Well, I think that it is interesting to look at actors in a film and how they relate to other films that they've done.
Yeah.
Baby, let's see, International Movie Database. Okay. Because you're familiar with Harold and Maude, right?
Of course, yeah. How
So
Ashby.
how best can you describe the story of Rosemary's Baby? With do your best as a synopsis for somebody who's never seen it.
It's if you're like, they did a good job in that show Mad Men, where they all go to see it and then they make a commercial inspired by what they saw, where there's like everyone's surrounding somebody and everybody's in on this conspiracy, and it's the same premise as Gaslight. And actually the movie Rosemary's Baby seems to reference this much older story about a woman with yellow wallpaper. I forget what that's called. Do you know what I'm talking about? There's like, it's a really weird, trippy story about a woman who becomes she kind of like goes into the wallpaper in her mind. It's even if you type in yellow wallpaper book, it should actually come up because it's quite famous. But yeah, throughout the movie, they seem to be making reference back to that. But the point is it's about gaslighting. It's a woman who's gaslit, but then it turns out that it's all true. It's called the yellow wallpaper. Yeah, that's it. And so like the way
It's a
that they'll
short
shoot it.
story by American writer Charlotte Perkins Gilman.
Mhm.
Gilman, first published in January 1892.
Yeah.
Jeez. In the New England magazine, it is regarded as an important early work of American feminist literature for its illustration of the attitudes towards mental and physical health of women in the 19th century. It is also lauded as an excellent work of horror fiction.
Yeah.
Plot: the
So
story describes a young woman and her husband. He imposes a rest cure for her when she suffers temporary nervous depression after the birth of their baby. It says post-mortem. Then they spend the summer at a colonial mansion where the narrator is largely confirmed to an upstairs nursery. The story makes striking use of unreliable narrator in order to gradually reveal the degree to which her husband has imprisoned her.
yeah.
So it's basically like, how would I describe it? Stream of consciousness describing Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. It's all
basically misery in reverse.
totally. And so yeah, it's that idea that everything that you were your kind of your worst fears that you were considering could be happening are actually happening. And so for Polanski it makes sense. Like, he survived the Warsaw Ghetto and the Holocaust. So it's like, and you
Back
can
in the
see that.
USSR.
Yeah, totally. And so you can see throughout his film career, him kind of making reference to these particular things that he experienced. And so this is part of his apartment trilogy, which included Repulsion and The Tenant. The Tenant is all three are crazy. But yeah, if you haven't seen The Tenant, I highly recommend it. That's it, it's one of these things where it's like, we're a lot of the films that Polanski has made since 1980, or actually, let's just say that I should say since they they applauded The Pianist, aren't known by American audiences, but they're known more in like European audiences, so a lot of people aren't exposed to a lot of the movies that he's been producing. But yeah, he definitely like draws back from a lot of that early childhood stuff, along with everything else in his life, including the Manson murders and everything. So I mean, that's part of this, is that he's a Holocaust survivor making a movie in like that's like a real like big budget Hollywood film. It's a hit, and then it's followed by his pregnant wife, 8.5 month pregnant wife, getting killed. And then it's amazing that flash forward into the future, he's so incredibly demonized. And what he did
I think it's cool that you
is
picked up on Mad Men, because Mad Men had that whole Sharon Tate connotation as well towards the end of it.
everything. Mad Men
Right.
had it all. So the child was reading
Mad Men was very
Rosemary's
self-aware of what we're
Baby.
talking about.
The daughter's reading Rosemary's Baby, and then there's
Right.
the episode of The Monolith, where he looks down the elevator shaft. There's all this Babylon reference with like even the intro to every show. Every show ends with the sun card from the Rider-Waite Tarot. You've probably noticed if you watch it to the end of the credits. But yeah, I mean, there's a million things we could discuss if, if you want to get into particulars. Julia, that was John Lennon's mother's name, so there's the song Julia in the White Album. And the fact that you're looking at a story of Rosemary's Baby, the whole thing is about childbirth. You have Rosemary's Baby and 2001: A Space Odyssey are both movies about childbirth. One of the Star Child, one of the Antichrist.
Right.
Like, I don't like it's so synchronistic. It's hard to imagine that just being whatever you want to call it happenstance. But I'm open to anything. It's very bizarre.
Well, I guess it's time to say, if you haven't already become a subscriber to Meta Egg, please do so ASAP. Right now, we are doing Rosemary's White Album, a film and album, Syzygy.
Sure.
This is a concept by David Plate, who you and I go back a long way.
Yeah.
And this is something that you have wanted to do for a long time. So I think that we should probably continue to do it. That's why I labeled this one number 1.
Okay.
Maybe sometime soon we can watch another one of your videos. If you want to see more by David, and this is not an outro, by the way, we're just chilling here for a second. You need to go to thesyncbook.com, hit videos, and then hit Syncflix. That has the Dorothy with the rainbow going through her brain, and that is symbolic because it will blow your mind. However, this is not what I wanted to do. I wanted to look at like what I did. I thought that this was I thought this was best in watching one of your films, is to have like a piece of paper nearby and write notes. And what I ended up doing, however, is like grouping it into the actual like songs. And what I noticed most of all was that like the songs definitely, beyond a shadow of doubt, sort of sectioned it up into scenes. For instance, like right after when she has sex with the devil, oh my God, this isn't a dream, this is really happening, that scene. Then like they wake up the next morning and it's like da 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 dum boom boom boom. They say it's your birthday, and it's like then you intersect with the dialogue from the movie, and it's like, oh, this is baby day. They're talking about the fact that that was the day they had marked on the calendar that she was fertile, and like that's when she was ovulating. And I don't know, it just messes with you because the whole tone of scene to scene changes in this movie. Sometimes they're happy, sometimes they come home and they're mad at each other, And that kind of is dictated by the actual tempo of the music. And so if you're a fan of just looking at cinema, this is interesting, especially if you know the movie. But if you're also a fan of listening to music, this is entertaining because like the emotion of the music transfers over. But this is the question, David. What the hell does this? I mean, is this proof of like multiverse weirdness? Or is this intent? It can't be intent.
I don't think that there's like ultimately like the line that exists between that could be a line in the sand. So this is an example.
So what's the metric? Where's the value? Like, how would you sell people going and watching these? Other from like
it's a meditation. So if we're going to talk about what's the value of a meditation, you know, I mean, it's a certain type of meditation, but it's like yeah, it's like, you know, when you have something that's so layered, it's like if you're going to go find a piece of jade and it's covered in salt and it's all white and you start rubbing it on the oil on your face and you start to see what's underneath and you're like, what is this there? You know, so for me on a personal level, it's just, you know, this is an experiment that I consider a very successful experiment. You know, it's a lot of information stored in something that if you were to separate the components wouldn't be as potent, and there's still things that are potent on their own. So yeah. Like it's crazy. Like if you look at like the Sgt. Pepper album cover actually depicts there's those were cutouts. They were large, like all the characters that go onto that cover, right, of that grave. And there's a character that's hidden behind that. If you look up the making of that cover, you can see him, and then you can see where he shows up. It's something Curry. He was a guy in Stanley Kubrick's The Killing. It's a screenshot from The Killing cut out, and he's got his gun aimed. And so he's actually got his gun aimed behind the Beatles in the final poster. He's stuck back there. He's shooting in the movie The Killing, Stanley Kubrick's The Killing. He's shooting a famous racehorse. He's shooting a racehorse, and this is a heist, right? And they take out this racehorse. What's crazy is like Red Rum was the name of a famous racehorse, maybe the most famous racehorse. I'm no expert, but that's what it looked like when I looked at its Wikipedia. That was at the time of The Shining. The Shining came out a few months, maybe a little more, 5 months, something like that, before John Lennon was killed. And so, it's very bizarre. Like Jack is John, like they're the same name. The Shining, the book, is named after John Lennon's song Instant Karma.
We all shine on.
And he dedicated it to his son Joe King. Why he named his son Joe King? What the fuck? But yeah, it's Joe King.
His name is not Joe King. His name is something different. Joe is his middle name, and he made his name Joe King. His name is like Joseph Hyman Hillman.
Well, whatever Joseph the fuck Hillman he King, says at the beginning of the book, it's the first. Hill, it's the first page of the book. It says this is to Joe King, who shines on.
You're right. Okay, I'll give it to. I'll allow it.
Yeah, but okay. But anyway, yeah. Point being, instant karma
is still in here. You guys see this? Just so you know, Grand Empress is my daughter, and she stalks David. So DCP is like a little love letter. And I don't want to see any weird Rosemary's Baby happen, David. Mr.
By you focusing on it, you're making it into a bigger deal than it otherwise needs to be.
No, that is not what is happening. Hey, but I gotta say, like, right, this scene right here made me realize that Rosemary's Baby is a sync movie. Like the way she figures out what is happening to her is in a very like synced, like
completely
piecing shit together.
Yeah, because there is something happening around her, and she's picking up on it, and she's feeling more and more crazy the closer that she gets to uncovering it. And so it is like kind of in and of itself is kind of like one of those ultimate sync films in a really weird way, because that's what we're doing. But we come up against conspiracies, people conspiring and looking for the order that's beyond that. What I want to find is the hand of God coming through into what should be our chaotic humans goings on. But there's a shell that you come up against, and that is people conspiring. And so there's something beyond that, though. And so that's the thing, is that that there's an organizing principle that exists in nature, like that exists, that is a thing. And then there's also human manipulation. And so there's something that when you're investigating something like this, especially in the high weirdness of like an album film sync, if it's solid, is you come up against this point of like, is this like, how mechanical is this, like how meticulous was this, if at all, like, or like what is the nature of magic? Like that's why I say, like, is it like just you give something a push or what? But yeah. So here she is saying, what is its eyes? What did you do to its eyes? And then that being the question is that when she actually has the baby that she's pregnant with in this scene, they're going to know that it was Frank's, who has all these ties to the Catholic Church, and it's probably not going to go well for him.
From the Beyonder and Miss Marvel having a baby in like Avengers 200 or something, to any like we talked about Charlize Theron earlier tonight, and Charlize Theron is in that movie called The Astronaut's Wife,
right, which has all kinds of parallels to this and 2001: A Space Odyssey at the same time. And yeah, it's true.
Well, I
And
mean,
then
it's even advertised as like the new. I mean, nobody knows who that movie is anymore, but that movie was advertised as the new like Rosemary's Baby.
Sure. Yeah. And so we need to talk about Kevin, but yeah.
So I mean,
Anyway.
if you had to if you like wanted to do I mean, do we like skim off of this idea of the Beatles and chapter 27 and stuff of that nature, and look at a film that has to do with this, or do we go in a totally different direction for our next one, looking at unrelated material?
There's a million things that I could have said in this hour, or that probably whatever you could have put out there.
We can keep going. I'm not necessarily cutting us off right now.
I mean, I like the idea of continuing on with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Norman fucking Rockwell from Lana Del Rey, because that's on the same. It extends directly out of this in a way. I mean, they're spinning around the same stuff. So, if you want to stay on topic, that'd be the way to do it. But we're not very good at staying on topic, either of us. But we try.
It's hard.
It's hard. When it comes to sync, it's hard. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot here. This is like fertile ground. I think that's the biggest thing, is like it's almost made fun of in Hollywood, this relationship between Roman Polanski and everything of that nature.
Yeah.
And so I think that it deserves to a good looking at. If anything else, it like helps to educate you on things that happened before you, so to speak. Because I mean, we're getting to the time period where the Beatles are ancient history almost.
What, right now?
Well, I think so. In a real big way. Like
Ringo's still playing live,
on the time period where a lot of things that happened in the 70s is probably going to get forgotten. And it's just the nature of the beast, so to say. I mean, the whole gestalt of Meta Egg is to go back in this like Ready Player One and try to find the ripe little jewels that should be before your time. But like if you're a film director or if you're a music lover, like studying the Beatles and studying Roman Polanski are kind of like imperative. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
And then if you're a nerd or a synchead who adores like trivia and stuff, these things create rabbit holes, and those rabbit holes.
I like sync because it allows me a means to kind of like approach something more objective with just information. So especially when you're dealing with things that are very charged topics and people have all kinds of reactions and judgments or whatever, you know, these things that they relate to, they can all be true, but at the same time sometimes they get in the way of like the intricacy of what's actually going on. And so I like it when the data accumulates to the point that it just speaks for itself, you know. And you can get that with sync films in this way, where especially like, you know, if you're if you're familiar enough with certain angles, it's like there'll be things that I'll see in these pairings and then I'll be looking up like information beyond, and I'll remember a connection that was made that I didn't may not even realize what it was that I was looking at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like that happens a lot. It's surprising how much that happens. Or when I pair something together and I don't realize the depth of the relationship between those artists, you know, of the filmmaker and the musician, you know. It's bizarre.
You kind of almost do it instinctively or intuitively, right? Like there's
So
an
yeah, it
intuitive.
depends,
That's
man.
why I wonder if it's like is multiverse things. You know what I mean? Like there's some sort of connection between all of these concepts because these concepts have played out between each other numerous times in some like infinity, right?
Right.
Or some simulation or whatever, like glitches in the matrix or glitches
Right. I
in
mean,
the actual.
it goes crazy deep because I mean, like even like saying December 8th is the day that John Lennon was killed, and it's the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. It was also the day of Pearl Harbor, and so like and when war was declared, I guess that what is that the next day? But it relates to Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor was Japan. Like, look at this picture. Like this is England, Japan, and Mark David Chapman was from Hawaii. Like the three
Wow.
converged on the day. Like it's weird shit like that. You know?
Yeah. I don't know if
But yeah,
I don't know if we've determined where to go next though. What did you
you
say?
know,
Lana Del Rey and what?
and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Let's go to thesyncbook.com. The Sync Book, and you have to spell it out because there's multiple books about sync out there.
You,
So
you just put
thesyncbook.com radio. If you go here, you can see podcast. 42 minutes is my old podcast. Always records is David's. If you go up here to videos, then you will see Meta Egg, which you should all subscribe and hit the bell for notification, and Sync Flicks. Now, Sync Flicks is probably where David and I are going to hang out a lot here come soon. But you can see that there's all kinds of stuff, all kinds of movies mixed with albums like Lana Del Rey and Born to Kill right here.
Yeah,
I
born to
remember
Die and
watching
Natural
this
Born
with
Killers.
Zach
Yeah.
Bauer
Oh, nice.
of oh man, that one's great. It's amazing. It really is out of control.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys want to have a party, I would suggest putting this on a big screen, making sure that the party favors are supplied, and enjoying the hell out of yourself. There's all kinds of stuff. In fact, one of the big contributors to MetaEgg found MetaEgg through discovering your work with the Apex Twins.
Oh, Aphex Twin?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're talking about a dark song? What are you talking about?
Well, what have you done with the Apex? Like, what have you done to mix them up?
I
Somebody
I
hit.
I paired Aphex Twin's album Drux with the film A Dark Song, which is about the Abram Mellon the Mage working. And so yeah, that one actually has both volumes up for the entirety of the thing, and they don't conflict. Like they just work together. It's crazy. But yeah,
White Zombie and Johnny Mnemonic. What is this? Starship? What is this?
so there's only one film that came out the day and year that David Bowie's Hero came out, Heroes,
Oh,
and this film is called Starship Invasions.
oh,
It's got what's his name, Saruman. It's got the guy from
Christopher Lee,
yeah, Christopher Lee in there. Yeah, it's weird. It's a UFO movie.
Jackie Strength. This is
It's
Tori
Tori
Amos.
Amos, yeah, from the Choir Girl Hotel and Jackie. And this album, she has the song Jackie's Strength, and so it's resonant. Actually, in fact, that whole album feels like a concept album to Jackie O.
I don't know. There's a lot here, man. Joy Division and Alien. Are you serious?
Yeah, they came out. I
That's
think
kind of dope.
I think they
That's
came
kind
out
of dope.
within 5 days of each other. This album and this film.
Really?
Yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
yeah, and look at the image on the Joy Division thing. Where have you seen that in Alien? Like it's almost the exact same image that shows up. It's
That's
crazy.
creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of like, I mean, if the album of Rosemary's Baby and the Beatles has so much baggage that goes along with it, but sometimes you just do it on when they came out. Because bro, I just did this interview with a guy from PKD, not a guy from PKD, a guy who basically created a class for this one right here. He created a class for Philip K. Dick.
Yeah, I watched
But I
most of it.
basically got him to admit that Philip K. Dick was hoping that Christian symbolism would show up in Blade Runner before he died, and that as soon as he saw it, he knew that somehow God had unintentionally put Christian symbolism. And the guy's like, yeah, the Christian symbolism's there. Do you know what I mean? So it's like the idea that things can be put into, like, we're breaching this thing where an artist can have symbolic reference to either current events or other pieces of media that's not intended. And that goes all the way back to like Jung and his he backtracked Nietzsche in the book Synchronicity. He's like, Nietzsche obviously paid homage or swiped this information from another spot, and then he went to go talk to Nietzsche, and Nietzsche's like, yeah, it was an accident. I didn't mean to do that.
Right. There's an old Kabbalistic story about that where the Kabbalist dies and he meets Moshe. He meets Moses in heaven, and he's like, talking to him about Kabbalah and the Torah and gematria and all this stuff, and he starts telling this whole spiel. And then he's like, ask Moses what he thinks of that. And Moses goes, wow, I never thought of that, but that's amazing. It's like, he wrote the book. So he's going to the guy who wrote the book and then being like, wow, I saw all this shit in your book. And he's like, huh, wow, that's crazy, man. Like, but so it's two things at once. It's like, in that case, it's like, wow, I didn't intend that consciously, but that is amazing,
Well, it's something about like wherever your head is, somehow you go with your art unintentionally, so to speak. So like if you think about what we've talked a lot about, like the basal ganglia, or the fact that individuals can learn task when they can't remember their learning task, maybe like performing task and learning task or creating artwork is like what it's all about. Like we might not know the full ramifications of something that we make. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally. And you put something out there and it's not really up to you what happens with it after that. It's like you let go of the bow. You know what I mean? You let go of the string of the bow, and something could deviate your arrow, but you just keep firing. So, I keep putting my stuff out there. I'm really grateful to Guillaume and Alan and Doug and you and everybody involved in this community to allow me the platform to be able to share my work. I mean, even if I share my stuff on Twitter now, on X, which I do, I think I have well over 100 there at this point. But the thing is that, you have to be a member, blah, blah, blah. Like, this is free. You can stream it. If you go to stream it and it's like buffering too much or whatever, you can download it. The best I could say is like, it's worth it. Like if you see one, if you're going through these album film pairings and you see something like, especially if like you're familiar with the album and you're familiar with the film and you're into it, those are the ones I'd recommend. Because like I said, with the Rosemary's Baby White Album thing, it's like the more familiar you are with the backstory, the more depth this is going to be for you. It's almost like it adds another dimension to something, beyond.
Well, I gotta say, you did one of me here. I made an album. I think it's at like the very bottom or something.
Towards the bottom there.
Right, here it is.
Yeah.
Here it is. This is an album that I made with my friend Zach Bauer, called 8-Bit. We even used John Lennon on the cover, so it is appropriate. And you mixed the album. You called me up. He's like, bro, I watched your album. I listened to your album like 30 times in a row. And then you mixed it with something, 2 movies that not only were the exact same length, or they're not the exact same length. There's a little bit of a cartoon at the beginning of Mario Brothers, but right when the animation ends, the other movie starts, then the credits roll at the exact same time. And I think the album, which isn't really that long, it's only like 30 minutes, it goes through maybe 5 times. But
is it 5? Probably 4.
Oh, it's a lot, but it hits it every time it goes through. It's really weird.
Yeah.
And like the little song, we made the album intentionally to be random. We were trying to play with the idea of synchronicity, but the fact that you took our music, my own music, that I had no intention of making it mix with this shit, and it does. Like, even you can see that the whole theme of the album cover in the middle matches the topics that are in the movies.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and that kind of gives like this credence to this idea that the author is not always the one who dictates what the art is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I just love collage, is like, I like the idea of like all these different artists like contributing to something without their realizing it, because they just put something together and put it out there, and for all the pieces to come together. Like if you look at the website, you know, I have a link to my art that's actually for sale. Like I work in a print shop. It's what I do for a living, you know. Like I stretch canvases and I build frames for people. But there's actually yeah, I have a, I don't know if you can, on that page, if you see it, do you see where it's highlighted where it says art? It's like boldened or whatever in that first opening paragraph. If you go to the top and you look at the paragraph, yeah, if you go to the top of the page, go all the way to the top. You know, you might want to, yeah, you can use that.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
It's a lot.
Woohoo!
But yeah, no, if you look here where it says art right there, you see above Sorry Cassandra? Like
Sorry Cassandra.
Yeah, I see the
right
art.
here.
Yeah, click there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, your collage art is phenomenal.
Right.
And these are like super high resolution also.
Yeah, they can actually technically be enormous. The digital integrity is such that they can really be blown up. And I do G-clay printing, which is like highest quality printing, like step down from like an actual silk screen. But it's an extremely detailed print. I can, you know, I can print on most things. I mean, I usually just do it on like enhanced matte or the like. But yeah. So yeah, this takes you to the website, and so people can order prints if they want. But yeah. I haven't actually sold a print, and oh my god, I think it's been at least 2 years or something like that. You know, at least online.
I mean, a while there. I mean, some of these prints are a little bit. I mean, you have sold some. I know that's for sure. But
yeah, the
actual size of them is just out of control.
Yeah, these are. I could actually go bigger than this if somebody wanted to actually call up Picture Appeal. Which is an option, you know, and we can do more custom stuff, even framing or anything, you know, but or putting it on canvas too, you know, beyond just a regular print. But yeah, totally. But yeah, no, I was just communicating that I like that idea of like people contributing to something without their awareness. Because like me, I get to like be like as a medium. Like I used to, like when I would paint and when I would draw and stuff, I would have this kind of like personal attachment to what it is that I produce. But the thing is, with like sync films and with like digital collage art or whatever it is that I'm working on, or regular collage art, like I don't have the same personal connection to it. Like I don't look at it, like I never get tired of looking at it. Like when it comes to like stuff that I'd paint, I would actually get tired of it and like want to give it away, you know? Like in fact, I don't have much to show for most of the like hand done art in my life that I've done, because I've given so much away. But I don't regret that. And I like the direction of just, you know, working with other people's stuff and making new things out of it, you know?
I like this guy's essay. This Death of the Author is basically the idea that anything that an artist makes is not really created by the author, but it's created by the entire cultural world and culture that, you know, like the entire cultural apparatus that they live within,
Mm-hmm.
so that anyone can come along and interpret the author's art in any
Mm-hmm.
which way that they deem worthy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that that's like a lot of what you're doing, in my opinion,
Yeah. I
because
mean, I
you're
put
kind of
stuff
like
out there.
disentangling and
People will respond to sync films that they see, and they'll see things in them sometimes and tell me about it that I could have watched it 100 times, I didn't catch. And so I love that, just because, like, pop culture kind of works that way, where it's like there's, there can be references to things that I might not know the full story of. Somebody hears a line, sees a scene, and they're like, oh my God, that feels like, like that was when Steve McQueen punched Keith Moon in the face or something like that. And you're like, what happened? Actually, Zach, when I was watching Bitter Honeymoon, like Bitter Moon and Honeymoon with Zach Bauer when he was visiting
well,
me
that
one
was
time.
another. Okay, so bitter. Okay, wait, because that's another Polanski movie, right?
Yeah. So yeah,
That's
he caught that. What was it? There was a Bob Dylan reference in Lana Del Rey's music, and he actually was like, "No, that song relates specifically." Oh, I can't do it justice. What that was, but yeah, no, I'm just, people catch things that I didn't. Whoosh,
Well, it's getting late, man. We did 2 shows. I think that we might not need to like make a plan. I need to watch the next movie, and then if not
Yeah,
next Tuesday, sometime next week, we need to get together again and talk about the next one. Like the
sure.
thing that's encouraging to me is that the obvious syncs between Rosemary's Baby and the White Album are there.
It's
Whether we
true.
can talk anybody into watching the movie, I know it remains to be seen, because like I said, even the White Album is a hard album to get through.
For
But
you, maybe
you
not for me, but yeah,
well, I mean, you also tacked the Manson family's album onto the end of it, which
yeah,
most people don't know. However,
right.
if you do listen, you can absolutely 120,000% see the White Album's influence on the Manson family. So it's a head
Oh,
twist.
that's true too. Yeah, there's actual copy of the White Album that's signed by all the members of the family, and Manson's signature in the middle says "last word?" question mark, and then it says "no," like exclamation point, I think. But it's like "no," like, and I'm like, is he saying that somebody's last words were "no," or is he saying, is the White Album that he's signing the last word and he's saying "no"? Because they're completely like, this is the thing, is that the juxtaposition of the White Album to the Manson family sings is crazy, because one is like the no budget album. It's like they're
Right.
working with nothing.
Naked.
And the other one's like, at the time, is like the biggest
Mass
production of the
produced.
year, mass
Overproduced.
produced, overproduced album of the year. And they couldn't be at more opposite sides of the, like,
But they ripped it off. Like there's one point where they just mix the lyrics up to obla dee, obla da, and they just write their own lyrics. But you're like, you're just singing the Beatles, man. And
right.
it's
But
like
you realize there's issues, though. There's major issues, because, like, even beyond the White Album, so like the photograph for Abbey Road where they're crossing the street, the iconic
right.
cover of that
The
album
the one that's
was
played on yesterday. Yeah.
that photo was taken within less than 24 hours of Sharon Tate's death. And so there's
Okay.
crazy, yeah, so there's
Well,
crazy
even like
shit
the
because,
dead girl in Rosemary's Baby, when the first the obvious one, when they're down in the basement, Rosemary meets a woman who's
yeah,
got the little thing around her neck, right?
the Devil's Pepper, yeah,
Then when she and her
Hannah
husband are
Street.
walking up, that woman has fallen on a beetle.
On a beetle.
Like,
There's 3 other beetles on the road in the different scenes
right.
in front of that building. That's the 4th beetle that
Just
gets
like
hit.
in Abbey Road. Like there's beetles all over Abbey Road. I mean, of
There's a
course,
beetle
like
on
I
the left.
guess
There's
that's
a
the
white
only
beetle.
vehicle around in the 60s. Like, what the hell?
There's a white beetle on the Beatles cover. That's not a mistake. And it's probably not a mistake that there's 4 beetles in front of the Dakota if you look at the different scenes in front of the
Right.
Dakota and you add them up.
Right.
And
In the
so,
exact place where he dies. Like, it's weird. It's
yeah,
weird.
it is fucking weird. But I was gonna say about that the Abbey Road thing is that, you know, in that album, when they say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all good children go to heaven, that was written on the door of, I don't think it was Spawn Ranch. I think it was the Death Valley place.
The
It's
other
written
one.
on the door, and apparently, I mean, somebody could fact check me on this, but from my understanding, that was written before the album was released. It had to have been, actually. So you're gonna
How? That doesn't make any sense. That's weird.
it does, because there was more communication happening between people than we realize, in all likelihood. And so do we know the specifics of that? We can speculate to a degree, but he's all up in that world. He's drug dealing for this whole scene, like all kinds of relationships, you know. So yeah, it's pretty nuts. I mean, he got that place by trading a gold Beach Boys record, you know, to the owners. You know, they let him stay there because of that. Like, and then it was because Terry Melcher had lived there prior to Polanski, and that's who he had thought had lived there until he showed up a few days before and met Sharon. If you watch in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, when it shows him meeting Jay Sebring, that's not actually who he met. They left out the guy who was like in the quad relationship, because Sharon Tate was actually with 3 men. It wasn't just Polanski and Jay Sebring. It was this other guy. I forget his name, but he's in Cul-de-sac, another Polanski film. And he left the film industry after Sharon's death because he was so devastated, and he was never in another movie or anything like that, you know. And so Quentin Tarantino, when he made that movie, out of respect, he didn't even include him at all, and he put Jay Sebring in his place as though they were just one person. But yeah,
Zagarat says the intelligence community connects all these worlds, and he is not a liar.
no, it's true. It's true, and it's there's incredible amount of connections. I mean, even when you're talking about like that Anton LaVey was the consultant for this movie, and then Anton LaVey is there with Susan Atkins shortly before the murders happen, while she's playing a vampire in a stage production, and then Sharon Tate had just played a vampire in Polanski's Fearless Vampire Killers. Oh, not a vampire, somebody who was killed by or taken hostage by the vampires. So she's a vampire victim, Sharon Tate. Susan Atkins, who killed Sharon Tate, is playing a vampire at the same time in one, like a super low level production. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a Hollywood film, and the other, not to say Fearless.
Well, so in Rosemary's Baby, I noticed that raw meat was a thing. Like, their meals, there's a big attention on meals, what the meals that they're having with the satanic, you know, worshipers who are banging on their doors while they're banging on their bed. But anyways, like, there's this idea of like her being like needing blood or some sort of vampire nature to just like give sustenance to the baby.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what's crazy too is like Sharon Tate was originally going to play Rosemary in Rosemary's Baby.
I mean, that makes sense.
Right. They both get pregnant. You know what I mean? Like Sharon Tate gets pregnant, Mia Farrow gets pregnant in real life, you know, during this time. And so it's crazy too. Like Sharon Tate's first movie had 2 working titles. One was 13, and the other working title was what is it? I'm thinking of the name of the book now, Day of the Arrow, but Eye of the Devil. Eye of the Devil. So Eye of the Devil
is associated with witchcraft. So yeah, that's like,
well, if you watch the movie, it's about the Golden Bough, and they equate it with the 12 disciples around the 13th Jesus, and then he gets sacrificed. And so this is a ritualistic killing of the king movie. She plays a witch in it. That's her first movie, is titled 13. Her last movie is titled 13 Chairs. So the last movie she's ever in is 13 Chairs. Her first movie is 13. You know, if you're looking at tarot from below, the 22 Trump arcana, if you're going from bottom to top, the 13th arcana in that reverse respect would be the High Priestess. And so that could be what's being referenced. I'm not really sure. It's pretty bizarre.
This is hilarious. Piano Gigger says a bunch of Satan worshipers singing Love Shack just popped in my head.
Bang, bang. Shot you down. Bang, bang. Hit the ground. Yeah.
Oh, Sharon Tate equals 121. John Lennon 121.
I don't know. Is that English?
Antichrist 121.
In what system?
Now we're getting geometry or
gematria.
whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gematria. We have 7 Gematrias. Okay, Bizarro World. Okay, all right, guys, listen. It is getting late.
Okay.
David, I
Yeah,
know it's
sure.
not as late for you as it is for me.
Oh,
but
right. You're in a different time zone. Right. I forgot. Okay. Thank you for doing this. This is fun.
Let's do it again, man. Let's do it
Thank you.
again. Just
Awesome.
probably tomorrow. Just send me the Lana Del Rey and the next one, and then we'll talk more about it. But the thing is like, honest to God, we really just like pecked the surface. There's so much. I don't even know if we did this justice.
It's an infinite conversation, actually. Like, if we wanted, we could continue on the same track for like an entire podcast that went every week, but we don't have to do that. I'm just saying
No,
we technically could. It's like you
thank
get,
you.
yeah.
I've had to deal with my daughter like spamming this and Sing Tank's chat room, who apparently she's not the only one who's in love with David Charles Plate, but you good looking beast. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate all the work that you've done. I mean, if we go back to how many different movies that you have on the syncbook.com, up underneath the videos, up underneath Syncflix, it is it's a big catalog with a lot of different genres and both movies and music. And I think that if people would consider it as some sort of like value to experience with other people, I know that you like to have individuals really focus on it. But some of the best situations that I personally have ever been in is when I'm standing in a room while they're playing in the background and people are making comments and like elbowing people. Like, did you see that? Is this really
Dude,
happening? Like, I've
I,
watched a lot of them with Zach, and it always gets down to the point where halfway through the film, we're yelling at the TV like, wait, press pause. Like, we have
yeah,
to stop and
there.
talk about what just happened. We can't just go on.
Dude,
But
I did it. I'll just real quick, if you don't mind. I did a screening in LA in 2019 with Digital Debris. It's Michael Allen's gallery, and like we were one of the nights we were doing a screening of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Lana Del Rey's Norman fucking Rockwell, which has got Jack Nicholson's grandson on the cover, by the way. But anyway, there's like people that there's people who were there for the whole thing, and there was people that came and left, and there was one woman that freaking Michael Allen told me afterwards, she was in there for, I'd say, a good maybe 8 to 10 minutes, and it was a scene when they go to the Playboy Mansion, and she stood there and she watched that whole sequence, and she walked out, and Michael Allen said he overheard her say to her friends, she goes, I don't know what the big deal is, they're just in there watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So she witnessed, like, I'd say at least 8 to 10 minutes of the sync film, didn't know she was watching a sync film.
right, she didn't realize that she thought it was part of the film.
Yeah.
I really like you called it Bitter Honeymoon, the one with Polanski, and he goes on the honeymoon in the boat with
Peter
Lana Del
Coyote.
Rey's.
Yeah.
Like that one, because that album is so good anyways,
Right.
but it almost acts in a way, Rosemary's Baby is so like such a disassociative album that it doesn't carry that over. I mean, it does have a separation of scenes. Each scene has a different song. Each song has a different feel. But in Lana Del Rey's, it almost like works as a narrative where you don't even have, I've never seen that movie before. And it was like, especially like the opening credits and everything, you get chill bumps because you're like, wait, is he mixing it? What is he doing here? Like, if you don't know the material, you won't, it's almost seamless. It really is seamless.
Yeah. Actually, Bree, Michael Allen's wife, she walked in while we were watching Midsommar with Tool's album, their most recent Fear Inoculum, and like the way that the volume works in between the vocals and everything. She watched half of that movie and she was like, wait, this isn't just the movie. She thought it was like that was how it was produced. She's like, it's not just like this crazy art film. She's like, I didn't realize it had Tool. Like that's what
Right.
she thought, that's what it was, like, because it just works so freaking well. But yeah, no, this is funny.
Yeah,
That's my
you could
favorite.
spite it
This is
by
that's kind
people.
of a
I
good one.
figure that it should be used more in public settings like that. I think that it should be playing in the background so people will be just like, you have this music going on, you have this video, and your brain's not even really like registering the fact because it thinks that the two go together anyways. And I mean, that's like, it's weird. It's weird, man. And I know that's like why we're here at Meta Egg. We're here to see what the weird things media do, right?
Totally.
Like nobody does it weirder than David Charles Plate. Stay away from my
Same, I guess.
daughter.
Me? Tell your daughter to stay away from me, dog. I have nothing to do with this. I'm just existing over here. Yeah.
Thank you all for watching, guys. Everybody who came over from Exertus, like, thank you guys. Think Tank will be back, I guess, next week. And who knows? Maybe if you guys are lucky, you'll get a new Saturday morning Vision Quest this week. We just did one with Frank Zero. Please go back and watch those. They have been really, really fun to do. Hopefully we'll do another one of this. And until then, guys, keep it cracking. All right.